Hey coach, I always hear you talking about this vision crap. What's wrong with wanting 100 rentals? Let's talk about it today on the Landlord Coach Daily Ish Show.
Five, four, three, two, one, zero, ignition, liftoff.
No, I didn't almost forget the name of my show. I was trying not to cough. Landlord Coach Daily Ish Show. Welcome. My name is Mark Dolfini, and welcome to the Landlord Coach Daily Ish Show. And my name is Mark Dolfini, Landlord Coach, and host of the Landlord Coach Daily Ish Show. Now that that is all out of the way, welcome to the show today. And hey, Coach, what is wrong with wanting 100 rentals? So I get this question from time to time, and it always kind of makes me laugh whenever I talk to somebody who either they're new in the business or they've been in the business for a little bit, and they hear about what is it I do, and they don't really know what I'm about in terms of really generating a lifestyle out of rental properties rather than that being your lifestyle. So that's just one of the things that I'm about, if you don't know me. But so what's wrong with wanting 100 rentals? We're going to talk about that here in just a second, but I'm going to go ahead and plug the website here just a second, landlordcoach.com/videos. I've got some events coming up, so you might want to check on that and some other videos and stuff and some free stuff that's on there. And also you can get a copy of the book for free. All I ask is you to cover shipping. That's this book right here. I'll even sign it. So with your own name. That way you can't even give it away. So, but honestly, if you want a copy of that, you can go to that site and you can get that as well. And a copy of the $1 Million Lease. If you're needing a lease and you're needing a really good lease that's in alignment with the VIP method that I teach in the Time Wealthy Investor 2.0, you can go check that out. Anyway, enough about that. So, hey, Coach, what is wrong with wanting 100 rentals? Well, some of you might be too young to remember this, but the days surrounding September 11th, 2001. So in my own case, I was in St. Louis at the time, and I was working as a corporate accountant. I was the assistant controller for the airport Marriott. And I had been working at that job for a little over, let me think now. I had been at that job for about a year, and I was not in love with that job. The Marriott, don't get me wrong, is a wonderful company to work for. And I've said that even after I left there. It's a wonderful company to work for, but that particular job was just not really a good fit for me. Just pushing papers from one side of the desk to the other just didn't really light my fire. And so I was going about doing my thing that I was doing, and it wasn't a bad paying job, but like I said, it just didn't wind my clock. So as I'm driving up, wrestling with traffic like everybody else is doing, I'm getting ready to come around the horn there on 270, I was probably about 10 minutes away from the office. And of course, came on the radio that someone interrupted the radio. I was listening to KMOX. So those of you who are in St. Louis might know exactly what I'm talking about. I was listening to their morning show, and that they had reported an airplane had flown into one of the towers, the World Trade Center. Now, I grew up in New York, and I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, okay, I knew enough that the flight patterns didn't go anywhere near that part of Manhattan, and those buildings hadn't been there for, they'd been there a minute. So it wasn't like, I'm thinking, okay, it was maybe some little puddle jumper, something like that. I'm thinking maybe if it was cloudy, but even then, it'd be kind of hard to hit those buildings. Well, then it wasn't much later that I was getting ready to pull into work that the second plane had just hit the tower. And at that point, everybody knew that we were under attack. So, if you're old enough to remember the September 11, 2001, you're probably old enough, you might remember having your own stories about what you did next. Not only how you felt, but what did you do? What was your initial thought in that moment when you're realizing the nation is under attack and our very existence was threatened at that point, just as Americans. We didn't know if we were going to even live from one moment to the next. Everyone was suspect. So I remember very, very clearly reaching out to people that I cared about, because most of my family was from New York. Now, they didn't live in Manhattan, but many of my friends worked in Manhattan. In fact, even a man that I referred to as my uncle, he was not an uncle, just kind of one of those people that was always around my parents. I ended up calling him uncle, but he worked for the Port Authority, and he was in the second tower, and just as he was leaving that building, the plane hit the second tower, and he caught, from what I understand, the last train off of the island before they shut everything down. So the interesting thing, though, is that my thoughts were about reaching out to people that I cared about. And it's interesting probably more about what I didn't talk about than what I did talk about. But you know what we didn't talk about? We'll cover that first. We didn't talk about our achievements that year. We didn't talk about how many rentals I bought in the previous quarter or, the last 6-8 weeks. We didn't talk about that. And we didn't talk about how much money we made, in the last couple transactions or 6-8 weeks or that year. Like, we didn't talk about what our adjusted gross income was on our tax return. We didn't talk about any of that. We comforted each other. We consoled one another. We made future plans and said, this is just kind of a wake-up call. And it was interesting because the days following, it was, as horrible as 9/11 was, 9/12 was a pretty cool day, only that you couldn't buy an American flag. You couldn't find one. You couldn't find one to have. In every place that had an American flag where you could stake it into the ground or put it on your car or whatever, you couldn't find them even to put them up even if you wanted to. And that was pretty cool because it was kind of like a giant middle finger to the rest of the world that was basically saying, like our president, George W. Bush at the time, said, look, you're either with us or you're with them. And, people, criticized him of that clear line in the sand, that dichotomy, like that was wrong. But I don't know. I think he was providing leadership. And I don't want to get into that and say if it was right or wrong, but it was just interesting, though, because we were all consoling one another. We reached out to one another. And I can guarantee you that not one person that lost someone on 9/11 said, thank God that, that they had 100 rental units. That's not at all what they were thinking about. They were thinking about their loved ones. They were thinking about all this. Now, granted, I know, okay, well, you could say, well, Coach, that was a really strange time. That was during times of stress. Of course, we're going to be thinking about the things we are most concerned about. Well, why are we living our lives backwards then? I'm not here to sound preachy, but I was on that same that same path, stuck on stupid, where I thought 100 rental units was so much more important than anything else in my world. That it takes events like this, or a funeral, or losing someone in the middle, unexpectedly, that you realize, oh man, we're here for a finite period of time, and that the 100 rental units is not what life should be about. And there's nothing wrong with wanting 100 rental units, or whatever your number is. But I think that what I've noticed, anyway, is that people really haven't thought it through. When they say 100, I'm thinking, okay, well, you obviously haven't thought that through at all, unless it just happened to land on 100 and you thought that down to the exact number in terms of that's the level of life output that you want. But no, what I find is that they're confusing 100 rental units with the life output that they think that will buy them, right? So chances are, people, if you knew anything about running rental properties and you're thinking, okay, you really want to deal with 100 families with 200 toilets and all that stuff that goes with it, I'm not saying that's wrong. But in my own case, and this is just my own personal experience, I grew overnight from like 20 to 60 to 92, that growing that fast, I woke up from one morning to the next and I didn't know how to handle the sheer volume that was coming at me with even 92 rental units. It was absolute madness. I had no infrastructure, I had no process, and most fundamentally, I didn't have a vision in terms of what I was trying to accomplish in the first place. So as a result, because I was stuck on stupid, I ended up with this horrible job, and I was working for a horrible boss. That would be me. And I ended up doing everything because I had no clear vision in terms of what it was I was trying to do it all for in the first place. Looking back, if I could have changed it all, I would have probably stopped around 25 or 30, right? if I looked back and really thought about really what it was I was trying to accomplish and thought, okay, well, you know what? I don't really need 100 rental units, but I'll tell you what, 30 grand a month would be pretty cool, right? Do I even need 30 grand a month? Well, what do I really want to do? What do I try to accomplish? Do I want to go on vacations more often? Well, how often? Let's be specific. What is it I'm trying to dial into? What is it I'm specifically want my life to look like? Do I want to have a deeper faith? Well, what is that going to take? That's going to take time. Well, what, is that going to take going to church a certain time? Is it going to be praying certain times during the day? Am I going to be reading, Bible studies and all this other stuff, right? Whatever that is. That's my walk. It doesn't have to be your walk. But if I want to have deeper relationships with people, well, guess what? That all takes time. So if you don't have the time, if you don't have control of your calendar because you weren't, clear about defining that up front, the money automatically isn't going to buy you more time, right? If anything, it tends to just keep you busier because, well, I got to do this. I got to do this because if I don't do that, I got to pay someone else to do that. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but you've got to have a clear vision in terms of what it is you're trying to accomplish. Otherwise, you end up chasing so many different rabbits, you end up catching none. And that was my life. That was my life for the better part of almost 10 years because I just kept growing and growing and growing for the sake of growing because I just thought that, well, 20 is better than 10 and 30 is better than 20 and 50 is definitely better than 30, right? And so on and so forth and so on. So I don't care if you want 100 rental units. I really don't. But as long as you have a really clear vision for what it is that you're wanting to accomplish, that has nothing to do with business. That has everything to do that if you do get a call at 3 o'clock in the morning that something really bad has happened, that you have the ability to get up and go and be with that person or have them be with you. And you're not going to be worrying about, well, I can't get away because I've got to take care of my rentals. I'm beholden to them and I don't have an ability to get away. And I was there. I missed so many life events. I missed so many funerals and weddings and births and all this stuff because I was so tied to my rental business. So that's why, to me, vision is so much more important than any specific number that you might want for your rental business. So, let's see. What is the call-in number? I don't have a call-in number, Roy. But you know what? Maybe I should do that. I would, I don't know. I never thought of that before. But thanks, Roy. I will have to maybe consider that. But if you've got a question, you're more than welcome to message me, and I'll be happy to do this again sometime. But anyway, that's all I have for today, everybody. Please be sure to place a value on your free time because if you don't, someone else will. But most important, there is no amount of money that will make time irrelevant. Have an awesome day, and I will see you next time.